Hello everyone! Today we will be sketching in this new art style by amazing artist Lotusbubble. If you haven't heard of her, I will leave a link in the description for you to check her out. And I'll show you how I've been exploring this slightly different drawing process. So let's dive into it. I started by drawing a basic circle for the head or cranium and sketched some crisscross lines to show the head's orientation. After that, I put some simple triangular shapes for the eyes, nose and mouth. And it is a great start to put the facial features first and then build the rest of the head shapes around them. As you can see, I have my reference on the canvas, but I'm not planning to follow it exactly. It is a little note to assist me in checking angles, proportions, etc. During this stage, our aim is to stay loose and only focus on capturing the gesture. We want to find the basic shapes and forms while showing movement. And it is really important to use a light and broad brush on this step to avoid going into the details too quickly. So here I'm using the brush recommended by Lotusbubble called Age Control by Sketch, which you can find on his Gumroad, and it is free for Procreate. I'll put a link in the description. And she also has her wonderful brush pack for Procreate, so I'll leave it in the description too. Once I've got a soft gesture of the basic angles, I add some refined details to the features and the overall drawing. And you can see that starting with general shapes can simplify the drawing process and make it less overwhelming than focusing on details from the beginning. So I found it helpful to work from big to small and gradually refine your sketch. The next thing I want to explore is how to draw hair in this style. And starting point for this is the same as for the head. I'm using big brush strokes first to capture the flow and put my first lines around the face, on the roots or the scalp area, which is a great place to start. So I'm just trying to pay attention to the area around the forehead and capture how it kind of divides from there, slowly moving my way to the bottom part of the hair. Once we are done with the gesture, we are ready to move to the next stage of the sketching process, which is to refine the gesture. So this stage requires a much thinner brush than the gesture one, and I modified a bit of square mechanical pencil from the Sketch pack. I squashed it a bit to have a great range of thickness, so I could create thicker and thinner lines, which are awesome for increasing the line quality of a drawing. So I lowered the opacity of my gesture layer, and on a new layer on top, I started creating some cleaner lines, following the gesture underneath as a guide. The goal of this step is to create a cleaner sketch with more accurate lines and correct all your mistakes from the gesture step. So, for example, if you notice that your angles are not quite right or some parts are too big or small, it is a good time to fix those proportional mistakes and put your cleaner lines in a better place. As you can see, I'm fixing the position of her eyes a bit, and don't forget to flip your canvas. It just gives you a fresh look at your drawing and helps to notice if something is inaccurate. I'm also using a liquify tool quite a lot, and yeah, I think it is great to be able to capture everything right from the beginning, but if you notice some inaccuracies along the process, Don't be scared to fix them by using different tools. Just try to keep in mind places where you tend to make mistakes and focus on them during your next drawing. You can use it as a little trick to improve your skills. One of the amazing things about this style is that we don't have as a goal to make our sketch very clean, which is a big benefit for me. If you watched my previous videos, you know that I'm not a big fan of making super clean line art. So it was one of the reasons why I chose to try this style. As Lydia, I also really like this kind of rough feel. Another thing to note is that you can repeat this refining process several times if you want to. So if you feel like your first layer of refining isn't as clean as you want, you definitely can go for one more round, lower the opacity of your refined sketch, and start another layer on top just to be even more accurate. And if you prefer this more rough, sketchy look, it may apply to correct your angles or proportions even more. After I finished with my refined layer, I moved forward to adding more complexity to the hair. So to achieve this layered look that is so prominent in the Lotusbubble style, I will use my first layer of the hair as an underlayer and add more layers on top of it. So I'm using my underlayer as a flow guide that helps me establish how and where to put my additional hair clumps. And to make these additional hair clumps more visible and dimensional, I'm adding some shadow underneath it. This step of layering hair adds volume and makes it feel more complex. The next important thing to pay attention to during this step is line quality. Basically, it's a variation of thick and thin lines. So while working on line quality, you want to make sure that you're using a brush with a pressure sensitivity. It means that it's thin when you use less pressure and gets thicker when you apply more pressure. Since I was using my modified mechanical pencil brush with pressure sensitivity through the refining stage, it already has a little bit of line quality, but making these shadows underneath hair strands helps to add more weight and emphasize this look even more. Another interesting thing to mention is that we want to add some extra complexity and darker areas around the face to highlight this area and turn it into our focal point. By this, it will naturally catch more attention, which is what we definitely want to achieve. And as a next step, I shade her face a bit and move to hair shading. For the shading layer, I'm using a multiply blend mode and following the curvature of the head to define the base big shading area. And by making these oval shapes and leaving little space between them white, I'm achieving that shine effect. As in all our previous steps, we are moving from big to small and adding more shadows to our smaller hair strands. So this awesome method from Lydia really helps quickly achieve this shiny look for the hair. After that, I'm going again and darkening some areas even more. As I was talking earlier, I'm darkening areas around her face to make it pop out and add more contrast to the drawing. And I'm adding some small details to her face. darkening her irises and adding some highlights. Lastly, I merged all layers and used some more transform tools. And as a final touch, I'm adding a little shine to her hair by adding this chromatic aberration effect, which is much easier to add if you are working in Procreate. But anyway, our first sketch is done. So the second sketch includes all the same steps as the first one. Here I put two references for myself, only because I want to use the top one as a reference for the hair, since I'm doing these sketches more as a hair practice. But the facial features look clear on the bottom one, so sometimes I combine it this way. And as I mentioned earlier, it will follow exact same steps as the previous sketch, so now I'm going to let you guys watch the process and get an idea of these techniques. Alright, and here are our final sketches. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!